Ever wonder how much money an oil and gas well makes? Let's talk about it. Howdy folks, my name is Steven Hatcher and I'm the creator of Minerals Guy. On this channel, we talk all things mineral rights and oil and gas. I have over a decade of experience buying, selling, and developing oil and gas properties all across the country. My company also acquires and aggregates thousands of acres of mineral rights all across the country every single year. So I get a lot of questions from folks asking me how to invest in oil and gas, and specifically how much money they could make investing in an oil and gas well. So participating in drilling ventures is not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of money and technical expertise to be successful. Make sure you stay tuned until the end of this video and I'll share my personal experience and the highest return that I've ever seen from an oil and gas well. So let's start with the basics. How do you even obtain the rights to drill an oil and gas well? Well, first, you need to acquire oil and gas leases covering the area where you want to drill. Oil and gas leases are the building blocks of an oil and gas company. Everything starts and ends with the land and the leases. So for example, let's say that you want to drill your own oil and gas well. Well, the first step is to acquire oil and gas leases from all the mineral owners in the area where you want to drill. In exchange for granting that lease to you, the lessee, you're going to pay the mineral owner a lease bonus or signing bonus upon execution of the lease, plus a percentage of revenue or a royalty generated from your wells. And this royalty is typically anywhere between 12.5% and 25% of total revenue. So how much does it cost to drill an oil well? The cost to drill a single land-based oil or natural gas well here in the US can range anywhere between a few $100,000 upwards of $15 million. It all depends on where you're drilling, how deep the target formation is, and how complex your drilling and completion program is. For example, a shallow vertical well in West Texas might only cost a few $100,000 to drill and complete. Whereas a deep horizontal well in the Haynesville Shale of North Louisiana or the Powder River Basin up in Wyoming might cost upwards of $12 million to drill and frack. And here's something that a lot of people don't realize. Oil and gas operators are like general contractors in real estate. They are the ones overseeing the drilling and completion programs, and they're the ones that pay the bills. But in almost all cases, they're gonna be hiring subcontractors or oilfield service companies to actually perform the work on location. For example, you might use Neighbors for drilling, Halliburton for cementing, Schlumberger for logging and well testing, and Liberty Frac for your completion. So what kind of returns could you expect from drilling an oil and gas well? Well, it all comes down to how much oil and natural gas your well produces. With a shallow, low pressure vertical well, you might only expect to make 10 to 30,000 barrels of oil. Whereas with a more expensive horizontal well, like a Wolfcamp well out in the Permian Basin, you might expect to make 500,000 or even 1,000,000 barrels of oil from that single well. So your return is going to be relative to the amount of money that you spent to drill and complete the well and the amount of production that you make from the well. For example, you might spend $250,000 to drill a vertical well and be pleased as punched if you get an IP or initial production rate of 30 barrels a day. Whereas if you spend $12 million on a deep horizontal well, you might be pretty disappointed if the IP is only 500 barrels a day. The return that you would expect is also relative to the risk that you're taking to drill the well in the first place. And this gets to the type of project that you're undertaking. With a wildcat prospect where no oil has been discovered for 5 or 10 miles, you would want a really high rate of return. So IRRs in excess of 100% and ROIs in excess of 3 times. And you would expect this high return to compensate you for the risk of total loss that you're taking by drilling that wildcat well. On the other hand, with a development project, you know the resources in the ground because of other successful wells that have been drilled in the direct vicinity. The oil has already been discovered and you're just trying to drain more of the reservoir. So in that case, you might be more comfortable with a more moderate return. For example, a 50% IRR in a 2.5 times ROI. So shale drilling in most cases is classified as development drilling. We know the resource is there. there. It's just a question of how much is it gonna cost to drill that well, and can we extract the resource economically? And this risk return comparison is similar to a cap rate in commercial real estate. If you're buying a Class D property that needs a ton of work, you're gonna expect a higher rate of return. So you might want a cap rate of 8% or more. Similarly, in wildcatting, you're gonna want a high rate of return for that project because of the relative risk that you're taking to drill that well in the first place. Whereas shale drilling is more like Class A real estate. You're okay paying more and earning a lower rate of return because you're taking less risk and you're able to put a lot more capital to work. At the end of the day, your goal is to make money, not oil, which means that you need to make enough money to pay for the cost to drill your well, compensate you for your risk, and provide you a return. So what's the highest return that I've ever seen in a well? The highest return that I've ever seen is from a well drilled on the Gulf Coast by a company that I used to work for. We shot 3D seismic over an area offsetting some excellent production. Our geophysicist found a bump on the seismic survey that stuck out like a sore thumb, and that's what he actually ended up calling it, the sore thumb prospect. So we leased it, we put a rig on it, and when we drilled down to the prospective formation, the bit just fell through the rock. What we drilled ended up being a pinnacle reef, and we had over 150 feet of net pay in the well and some of the highest porosity and permeability that you could expect in the lower 48. We ended up drilling another well into the reef, and those two wells combined have produced in excess of 1.7 million barrels and over 3 billion cubic feet of natural gas. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of over $100 million in total revenues. And the wells cost about $3 million each to drill and complete. I'll let you do the math on the return. So remember, drilling oil and gas wells is not for the faint of heart. It takes a ton of capital and technical expertise to be successful. But some of the largest fortunes in the country have been made with oil and gas. If you want to learn more about mineral rights and oil and gas investing, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm also working on a course that shares my secrets for how my company acquires thousands of acres of producing mineral rights across the country every single year. If you're interested in jumping on the wait list, drop us a comment down below.